Welcome to Rettle's Pub, where we talk about the spirits while partaking of spirits. Here are your hosts, Nate and Mason.
I remember the first picture I posted on Facebook with cut hair. I said, oh God, this is going to start a shit storm, and it did. That is when all of a sudden my parents forgot my birthday. They forgot, Christmas. They literally never called me for 2 years. I never heard from them. And our relationship hadn't been, I wouldn't say it would have been the best or the closest, but to be completely abandoned like that was honestly a lot of the trauma that occurred with the whole thing. I know that I remember going to a therapist and sitting there crying, and I felt like a 4-year-old and saying, I feel abandoned. I feel abandoned. And she would say, who? Why? And I said, my mom. And even though my mom and I, up to that point, had that close relationship, I literally felt like an orphan. Again, in my middle 30s. I just felt like, you love me, but you love me based on the fact that I do what you've taught me to do. I live like you've taught me to live. I please you. And so your love is conditional. And so that was a really hard pill to swallow and a lot of trauma to get through, to figure out, I had to be okay with it. I had to be okay with that relationship being non-existent, for 2 years. And then when it finally came back around, it was a very, it's weird. So we've been out now, we always celebrate in February. We always have a drink to celebrate our coming out party. But it will be 9 years. And, but it took a while for my parents to come around and to have that conversation of, this is how we're going to live. And if you don't like it, that's okay. We've had it once in 9 years, and that was only last year. So it's just kind of been one of those things that we've ignored. We are back in contact. In fact, I would say now I'm closer to my parents probably than anybody else in my family, my other siblings, truly. But it's taken a lot of work to get there, a lot of changing on my part of understanding them. And I'll be honest with you, I look back and I really feel pity,
yes,
for people that are still in that brainwashing.
Yes.
Truly. I really do. I feel so much pity for them and just so much sadness, that I hope they can get out. But like my parents, I know that's never going to happen, obviously. But I have nieces and nephews that are still young, and I'm like, hold out hope.
I explained to Nathan when we started the podcast, I don't know if it was recorded, but I basically stated, and you'll get this, is that our parents were our enforcers. And the UPC were our
100%.
parents. UPC raised us. It was our parents that did the enforcement and the grooming. That was the word I used. We were groomed by our parents.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember one of the toughest conversations I ever had with my mom was when we were just starting to talk again, and really, I will say this, that God laid it on my heart to make that first move after, 2 years of therapy and getting over my anger at my parents, because I was very angry. Again, I felt duped. I felt lied to. I felt that all of the fear that I had to overcome was because they put it in there. So there was a lot of anger. But I felt that I should be the one to reach out. So I started making an effort and calling. And yeah, there's some stilted conversations at first, but I remember having this conversation with my mom and saying, I don't need you to be my pastor. I don't need you to be my pastor's wife. I need you to be my mom. Because, you too, Nate, when your parent is your pastor as well as your parent, they're more your pastor than your parent.
Yes.
Like always. They're your pastor before your parent. And so I don't need you to be my pastor. I need you to be my mom. I need you to be my dad. I need you to be my parent. And it took a while for that to sink in, I think, for them to understand, to separate themselves from that, because they just didn't know how. They struggled. And I think with some of my other siblings that actually did go to their church for a while and then left. I don't think they have made that leap. But for us, it took a lot of again, deconstruction, even in that relationship of, you're no longer my pastor. You know, our relationship has to be, I'm your daughter, you're my mom, you're my dad. If I call you, I need you as my parent. I don't need you as anything else. And now truly it has become that, thankfully. I'm so grateful and so thankful. But it took a lot of work to get there.
It does take.
I will say. It does, yeah.
So deconstructing from the apostolic movement or from Pentecostalism, right, or evangelicalism, when did you come to realize, or when did you spiritual awake? What sparked that spiritual awakening? Do you remember that birth?
Yeah, I actually do. So, like I said, I'd always been really sensitive as a child, and I'd seen angels and seen demons. But when I was a teenager, I started being able to really tap into some things, like I could predict death, which is, I know, a very creepy thing, but it's true. And it started happening over and over and over. And so I knew at that point that something the supernatural is going on here. And I knew I couldn't spiritualize that. I knew God wasn't telling me that somebody's just going to die. Like, I knew something was off about that. But it's after Trace's dad died. So his dad died of cancer, and he was a very well-known UPC evangelist and pastor. And like I said, that relationship ended really sadly because he cut Trace off, and then he died before they could make amends. And I got invited from a coworker to go to a medium for a reading. And it was a group reading. It was only 10 of us in the room. And Trace went with me, and I was very curious. Like, I've kind of believed in some of that stuff before. Like, I've kind of read stories and been like, okay, there's something to this. And I had always been able to prophesy, right? You know, see the future for different things and different instances, you know. And so I understood that, I think, a little bit more than maybe some Pentecostals do. But we went to this medium reading, and it was a young man, and within the first 5 minutes of the session starting, he's like, I don't know. He said, I'm sorry, I have to stop. He said, but there is a man that keeps coming through. And he described Teresa's dad to a T. And he just started just saying all of this stuff directly. And of course, he's looking at Trace, but not looking at Trace, right? We're sitting there beside each other. And he's saying all of these things, like very specific things that nobody else could have known. Like, he mentioned, he's like, through him, you know, his dad said, I remember this photo, it's one of my favorite photos, and it's me and you and your mom, and I'm holding you, and we're leaning against the car, the Cadillac. And what was so funny is just a week or two before, I had stumbled across that photo. And I was like, Trace didn't remember it. I mean, he was a very small child in this photo. But I started elbowing, like, oh my God, I just found that photo. Like, how does he know this? But I think that those things happen, right, as reassurances that there's something's going on here that's real. It's not just fake. And then, if you knew Trace's dad, he was a very stoic man. He was a typical UPC pastor that's always right, very egotistical. And then he said something that literally just made both of us start pouring tears. He said, I'm sorry. And when he said that, it was like something just broke over both of us. And he said, I'm sorry that I put so much pressure on you. I'm sorry that I made you believe like I believed. And he just started apologizing for all of these things that in real human life, he never would have said. Let's just be honest. So after that reading, it was many things happened during that reading, but it was amazing. We get out of the car and we sit there, and I remember, instead of feeling, I expected to feel fear, right? Because again, we taught this is of the devil, or maybe shame that I had actually went to this thing. All we felt was joy. We started telling stories about his dad and the other loved ones in my life that had come forward. And we started laughing and we're telling stories. And I just said, I just feel like a weight's lifted off me. And he's like, yeah, me too. This just feels wonderful. And that was my aha moment. That, oh, wait a minute. This is not scary. It's not evil. It's not a demon. It's truly something that is enlightening. And it can bring joy. And it can bring peace. And I will say, up to that point, the months that had ensued between his dad's death and that reading, he had been really struggling, obviously, with, of course, anger and depression and grief. And all of that lifted. Just, poof. It was a true peace that happened. And that's what I knew. I was like, okay, you know what? I have this gift, and I've just been so scared to allow it to manifest because, again, of what I've been taught, even though I've deconstructed, that's still like, it's back here. And I was like, okay, this is not scary. This is a good thing. And so from that time on, it's like the universe started bringing people and things into my life and into Trace's life, honestly. He became really interested in Reiki, and he's a healer. I knew he's a healer from the time I met him. I've told him that many times. And he became interested in Reiki, and it's like once he did, it clicked with him, like, I recognize this. He recognized it from some past life, I believe. He recognized that ability to heal. So that was my big aha moment, and ever since then, there's been many things that's happened, but really, truly, I realize now the people that I've seen, the ghosts that I've seen, the angels that I've seen, it truly was my gift manifesting. I just didn't know it. I didn't recognize it. I didn't know how to accept it and embrace it and be proud of it and not ashamed of it. So we've had several run-ins or instances, opportunities, I guess, to meet with mediums, and they've always spoke such wonderful things into our lives. And me, myself, I really became interested, to answer for another part of your question, in past lives. Because I've always had these, even as a kid, had recurring dreams of me as an adult in another time, another place, and I always knew, why do I keep having this over and over and over? I keep seeing the same house, I keep seeing the same person, I keep seeing, something's up with this. So part of my journey after that awakening was starting to really research past lives and just to see what it was about. I'd heard of it, didn't really know much about it, but I felt like there was a connection there I just couldn't quite shake. And as I did, it's like I opened that door, and all of a sudden at night, my bedroom would be flooded with souls. And it got to the point where I started looking up, okay, how do I get this to stop? Because I want to sleep. I want to sleep the whole night through. And so I learned how to control it, for lack of a better word, in a healthy way.
So when you do become visited, right? Is there something that you see? Is there something you smell? How do you recognize when they arrive?
So usually I see them. Almost always I see them. Occasionally I will just see they just kind of show up as a shimmer or a sparkle. They don't identify themselves, but I can always tell if it's a male or female presence, or if it's neither. I've had some that don't really identify, I guess, as is either. I think they're just a soul, but usually they show themselves, and I see them as they were. And I always wonder, because I've seen different time periods, and so I think maybe when they show themselves to me in whatever period garb they're in, that's the period maybe that they felt the most comfortable at, or loved in, or that doesn't necessarily mean they haven't lived since then, but I think that's where they like to go back to. So I've definitely seen people in all periods of dress. I've seen them at night, I've seen them in day. Being able to predict or see into other people's past lives, like you, for instance, and just automatically know something about it. I don't necessarily see that. Sometimes I just have a knowing. I'll just be, oh, wow. And instantly, it'll almost come out of my mouth before I can stop it. Oh, whoa, wait a minute, But I've seen that gift just give so much back to people that, learn that it's a good thing. But yeah, they show up as, in fact, one of the very first ones that I saw was, now I understand, she was my great grandmother. And she showed up and she wouldn't leave. And so I woke Trace up, it was at night, and I said, there's a lady here and she won't leave. And so this is actually kind of funny. She was in a really long dress, kind of maybe the 1800s, late 1800s. And so he just kind of sat up in bed, and he said, "Where is she?" And I told him, and he pointed, and he said, "Okay, leave now. She needs to sleep." And when he did, she said, and grabbed her skirt and kind of like switched out. She got mad. It was so funny. So I cracked up laughing. He's like, "Why are you laughing?" I was like, "You just don't even know what she just did." I was like, "That's where I get it from." Oh, okay. So they do have personalities for sure.
So, you have any questions so far?
I had one, but she answered it. So,
Okay.
All
right.
Oh.
So with mine and yours connection, would you care to expound a little on that? Share that story with. I haven't told Nathan anything. Would you care to share our connection?
Do you mean what I saw for you? What I have felt for you? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't mind a bit. Yeah, I started feeling like almost as soon as we started chatting on Facebook, that there was a deeper connection, which I've always, felt connected to you, and I've always known you. Like, I don't remember when I didn't know you, honestly. But I don't know. I just instantly started feeling like there's a history here that I didn't know before. And one day, as you know, we were chatting online, and I just felt like I just all of a sudden knew it. Like, I felt it. Like, I was like, he was a Catholic priest before. Like, I almost couldn't stop myself from typing it to you. Like, it was just there. And I knew it from like the deepest part of me. I just knew it from the deepest part of me that this is a big piece of a puzzle that you needed to know. And your reaction was really shocking to me, because again, you never know how people are going to take these things. You don't really know. Are they going to think, "Oh, she's really cuckoo. She's been hitting the lemon drops a little too hard." So I really wasn't for sure. But your reaction was like just a really great confirmation that, okay, I didn't freak him out, number one. And that number two, this was really meaningful to you. And that it was a piece of a journey that you really needed, you had really looked for.
The reaction was very emotional.
And so,
very emotional. Driving down the road.
Yeah, I remember you
shouldn't have been texting and driving, right? But we were texting, I was driving, and you made that statement. And the moment I read that statement, I became extremely emotional, out of the blue. I wasn't tired. I wasn't exhausted. Yeah. I wasn't throwing a temper tantrum. But the moment you made that statement, it was a full emotional confirmation. Go ahead.
Right. Well, I think that's what I've experienced myself and others I've noticed too. But when you do see into your past life, I think it's a strong connection to something obviously in your past that maybe has been forgotten in this lifetime. And I think your soul instantly awakens. It recognizes it and it says, "Whoa, wait a minute. I've missed that. I loved that. Why has that been a part of this life?" And I think it's just so enlightening. As I mentioned a while ago, I had the same recurring dream over and over and over as a kid. I'll tell it to you. It was me in a place that was very green and hilly, with not a lot of trees. It was very open. It was a long white house, looked like stucco, like handmade white house, low roof. I'm a young woman, and I'm living with an older gentleman, and I know that my mate is off at battle. And I would have this dream over and over and over. And one day we were watching a documentary of somewhere in Europe, and I believe it was Ireland. And all of a sudden, this long white house pops up on the screen. And I just start, here comes the waterworks. And Trace looks at me, and now, he's used to this, but he looks at me and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "That's the kind of house. That's the house I've seen for 40 plus years, almost. Like, that's it. That's the style of house. I'm not saying that it's the exact house, but it's that style of house. It came from that time period and that land." All of a sudden I recognized it. Did I recognize it in this life? Of course not. I've never been there, but my soul rose up and said, "Oh my gosh, that's that memory. That's that imprint. Why is that important in my life? I haven't figured that out yet. I really don't. I don't know what the significance is, or if there's any significance. Maybe it was just a memory that just lingered, but it definitely evokes an emotion in you. And then, as you know, recently you and I were chatting, and while we were chatting, and I will say this is the first time this has happened, Adam, while we were chatting, all of a sudden I just was in another place, and I was a young woman in very almost rags, and it was a very dirty. It was a small city is what it looked like. It was a very dirty, very a lot of animal feces, and it was just I knew it was probably Middle Ages, something like that, because it was just that setting. And a priest was walking away from me, and he had long brown robes, and he had kind of a simple rope tied around his waist, and had the cowl over his head. And I called out to you, and you turned around and looked at me, and it was you. And not as you present now, it was a different face, but I instantly knew it was you. And you were on your way somewhere, but I needed help, and you were turning to help me. And I think that speaks to the twin flame that you and I have talked about, where I do believe souls choose to journey together through different times, and there's significance in that. And I think that in that moment, I went back to a time where you were there for me, and I needed your help, and you helped me. And maybe that's why it's come back around in this world, that in some way maybe I've been able to help you in your journey with this. So I think it's beautiful. It really is beautiful.
We're in the same community, right? We're in the same soul group.
Yeah.
Right. Nate and I have talked about it several times, where we exemplify it is that before we came here, all of us were sitting in a break room, designing where we're going, what we're doing, the experiences we're going to have, the lessons we're supposed to learn.
Right.
Then we reincarnate here.
Right.
And then I guess when we pass, we meet together in the break room again, and laugh and discuss our experiences and what we've gone through.
Yeah, absolutely. Me and Trace have had a lot of conversation about that. Why do we choose this time, this world, these parents? What is it? And I am a firm believer that our soul is seeking to learn something, to grow in some way. And even though the experiences of this life may not be easy, there's probably many things actually from this life that our soul will take forward into the next life. And I really believe by looking back, you realize who you are now, and you realize who you can become, and who you will become in the future as the next manifestation of your soul. So I think you can learn so much about yourself, and I've seen a lot of growth in myself and Trace both, honestly, in that regard. Just realizing where some of those, even something as silly as a habit, has come from. You go, oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's why I do that. That's why I think that way. That's why, because at some point it was imprinted on your soul, and it stuck with you, for better or worse sometimes. But
it was something we've done in the past that when we process it now, or we activate it now, it's so easy. It's so easy.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing your experience with Nate? I remember he had a dream, and during his beginning of his awakening, he was having experiences with his twin flame.
Yeah, I thought I was going crazy.
Go ahead.
Oh, yes, I do remember this. This is like at the very beginning, when you and I started kind of chatting again. Yeah, and honestly, I'm going to be real honest with you right now. I don't remember exactly what that whole conversation was at this point. I truly don't remember.
No worries.
So sorry.
No worries. It's a year ago. We slept between then and now. Oh.
Yeah, we have, yeah.
Would you like to tell your dream?
So, you've heard the podcast. I didn't believe in any of it, and all of a sudden, I had to start believing in it. had that choice to be made. And the dream I had was my twin flame and myself, and she's much younger than I am, even in the dream. And I was in a specific truck. I can see it to this day. And that's the other thing. I don't have dreams. I normally don't. And so in this dream, it was a green and white truck, specific make, specific model. I didn't have a time frame, a year, but it was in the 60s, and I knew what it was. I had sent Adam a picture of it, and by the way, he didn't tell me this till 6-8 months later. Just so you know, I needed some confirmation, and my wonderful brother refused to give it up. So
he had to learn a little bit. He had a little bit of learning to do.
Yeah, I didn't want to freak him out.
So Adam, evidently you and he were talking about myself and what I was going through.
Yes.
And he had told you the story about the truck. I don't think I'd even told Adam the color of the truck or anything. I just told him it was a truck. And
oh yes, it's coming back to me now.
You sent him a picture of the truck, and it was the exact same picture that I sent to him. Of the green and white Ford truck.
I remember this.
And like I said,
yes.
this jerk of a brother of mine didn't let me know. And so
I was waiting for the podcast.
Yeah, we're 6.
Yeah, that's right. He knew greater things were to come.
It was longer than 6 months. That happened in June, and I don't think he told me till like May of this last year. So over a year, or quite almost a year. He's a jerk. He just explained.
Yeah. Little brothers can be that way. I know. I have one myself.
I did. If we may take a slight turn, I would like to get your thoughts on a couple of things. One, like I said, I don't have very many dreams, but pertaining to my twin flame specifically, I've had a few, and they always have to do with the most real. Or like I was there. I was not able to protect her in a situation that she was in. And it's funny because I've had several dreams of different time periods where it was the same situation. And to the point even today, I struggle with not being available to protect. What are your thoughts on that? And is that something well, I'll just tell you, is that something that follows us through our lives? Or is it, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it can if we don't deal with it now. So it sounds like you're really dealing with a lot of guilt. You're carrying a burden of guilt because you feel like you didn't protect her. It's your twin flame. You feel responsible for her.
No, it's not in a way.
Just like
it is.
It is, yeah. And just like you do your children now, right? You feel like it's your responsibility as a father to protect them, to take care of them. And you feel that towards a twin flame. And when you fell in that, as obviously you feel like you have in past lives, there's going to be a guilt that carries. But absolutely, if you don't confront it and work through it in this life, you'll carry it into the next and the next and the next. Just like you meet people that have feelings of they're scared of every little thing that they come across, right? They have all these phobias, as we now label them. Where do those come from? They're from past lives, and they've carried them from life to life to life because they've never overcome them. They've never faced them, and they never moved past them. And I know it sounds very simple, but truly the way to overcome it is to face it, to figure out, okay, this guilt is coming from a place of I couldn't protect her at whatever time period. Could I go back in time? No, I can't go back in time. But I have to accept that. I have to accept that I failed. I have to forgive myself for failing. And I have to move past it. Just like you do in every other situation in your life now. And acceptance is a big part of that. And that's the hardest part of that because you can't change it. A lot of things that we deal with in this life, we can still have time to change, right? So you could go in, and if you have guilt right now over something, you could go and you could deal with it directly with that person maybe, or through therapy. But if it was 150 years ago, 2,000 years ago, you can't go back. But you have to forgive yourself. And then you have to accept that, okay, you know what? I failed, but I'm okay with that now. Bring yourself peace and then move on, or you'll carry it forward.
Well, I mean, it doesn't bother me so much now. I think because
Good.
It makes me wonder if there were times in the past that I just didn't face it then. This iteration of who I am, I was given an opportunity to face it in a less physical manner, where I faced it without actually having to deal with it. You know, I still have that tinge of, oh my God, is she okay? You know, but it's not so much. And there's been some changes over the last few months that I'm like you said, acceptance. It's almost like, well, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. You know, I've done all I can do. Yep. She knows I'm here if she needs me, and that's all I can do.
Right.
And so,
and that's all you can do.
It's the last few months have been very peaceful in that front.
Good.
But the other question I had for you to get your thoughts on, I came across somebody, and it's funny because it's a twin flame of someone else. I've never met the person. This person lives in Scotland. And it's
cool.
A friend of mine's twin flame, and she showed me a picture of him, and I know the guy. Like, I've never laid eyes on him. My heart jumped when I saw him. What are your thoughts on that sort of thing, and how have you had it happen to you in your situations and your life?
I have. I've had it happen to me directly, and Trace has had it happen actually a couple of times. So I feel like it goes beyond the physical. So when you saw the picture of him, your soul goes, wait a minute. And even though he wasn't here in the physical, your soul still knew him. Absolutely believe that. And at some point in some past life, you came in contact with him. And whether it was a meaningful relationship or not, who knows? You know, that may come to fruitfulness at some point. You may realize it. But I'll give you it's not about a person, but it's about a place, a really cool example. We were watching a Western, and it was about, I believe it was about Dodge City, I think. It was an old Western. And so I'm a history buff. I love all things history. So I look up on my phone pictures of Dodge City. And there just happens to be this picture of like the backside of Dodge City, that not the one you ever see, you know, in travel guides and on TV. You know, it's like this back road, nobody knows about it. And it happened to come up. And so without missing a beat, I show it to Trace. I'm like, oh, look at this. He goes, oh, I know where that's at. That's Dodge City. And I looked at my phone. I was making sure that Dodge City wasn't anywhere on it. You know, I was like, how do you know that? He's like, because I've been there. I walked right down that road before. And I was like, but you've never been there. He's like, no, I've been there. I can tell you what's around the next corner. And so, you know, your soul recognizes that. Again, is that significant? Probably not. But it's a place or a person that your soul goes, oh, wait a minute. Hey, I know that. I recognize that. And there's almost like an excitement. Did you feel excitement?
It's a weird,
in your chest a little bit?
Thing. It was something, and this has only happened in the last few months. You know, it was a weird deal because I've never met anybody that I'm like, I've met people that I get along with really well right off the bat. But this was like a more intense feeling with this guy. You know, it was like, I know this guy. I have no clue where I know him from.
Yeah.
I've never met him because he's never been to the U.S. and I've never been to Scotland. But I know this guy.